My foes are many, they rise against me, but I will hold my ground. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always, always. Trouble surrounds me, chaos surrounding, my soul will rest in I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. And oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always, always.
Sing it out. I lift my eyes.
I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. I lift my eyes up, my help comes from the Lord. Oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, His promise is true, my God will come through always, always. And oh my God, He will not delay, my refuge and strength always, always.
Awesome.
All the poor and powerless, and all the lost and lonely, all the thieves will come confess and know that you are holy. They'll know that you are holy. And all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. and all the hearts who are content, and all who feel unworthy, and all who heard with nothing left, will know that you are holy, and all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. All will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout it, sing out, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God.
All right, let's pray, guys. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your love and your grace and your mercy, God. We thank you for the opportunity to even be here, Lord. Thank you for Piedmont. Thank you for my fellow students, faculty, and staff, Lord. I just pray that you continue to conform us into the image of your Son, that your Holy Spirit give the child speaker the words to say, Lord, that you lead him, Lord. And just pray that we continue to live to your glory. It's in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
It is a delight having IFCA with us this week, and I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I think I was looking for them all my life, or at least all my adult life. Didn't know it, looking for a group like this. But boy, when I found them, I really, really enjoyed it and have appreciated the relationship that we've had at Piedmont with IFCA. And, of course, with Les and Dan being here this week, that's fantastic as well. If you have any opportunity this summer, you should go out to just south of Cincinnati to the Covington, Kentucky area where they're going to have their convention. It's actually the week before the 4th of July. And all the information is on the back of the magazine. They've asked you to pick up one of those if you like. This year, a couple of their speakers you would know most likely. Ken Ham is going to be a keynote speaker this year. Also, Stephen Davey is going to be a keynote speaker. It's going to be a great week. You're going to love the warmth, the fellowship, the focus on the Word, the focus on evangelism and discipleship. And this organization is bending over backwards for Piedmont. They've actually moved somebody to this part of the world. Actually, kind of chose to move here. He's kind of come home. But it is really nice to know that we have that kind of a connection, and they're looking for opportunities to network us with things that they're connected to. And you're going to hear more about that today. Welcome, Dan Nave.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pettit. I appreciate that. And thank you, worship team. I was so excited when I saw the cajon. That's what I played in our worship band up in Indiana when I pastored. So I got to preach and play the congas and the cajon. It was awesome. And thank you so much for leading us to the throne that way. I really appreciate it. If you have a copy of the scriptures with you, I'd ask you to turn to Psalm chapter 78, please. Psalm chapter 78. I want to read some verses. I'm really not going to make much comment at all about these verses. I believe they speak for themselves. I want to talk with you this morning about our ministry at Southeast Church Extension, and what we do and what God is doing through this brand new kind of baby agency. Psalm chapter 78, verse 1. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. Now listen to these next verses. We will not hide them from their children, showing the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and His strength and His wonderful works that He has done. For He established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, that He commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments. I recognize dispensationally that this was written to and about the children of Israel, but is it not true that those of us who know Christ today ought to also be passing that on to the next generation? And y'all who were in the devotion time with us last night, we laughed at ourselves. At least they laughed at me because I made reference to me being old. And I am. And in the years that God gives me, whether it's 5 years or 25 years, I hope it's a long time. I really want to be alive at the rapture because I'm just a girl. I'm afraid to die. I'm a scaredy cat. Didn't mean to offend you ladies there. I'm afraid to die. I've never flown. I always, preferred to know if I got to bail out, it's only 12 inches to the ground. But at the rapture, I'll like that if I can get that opportunity. But while I'm here, while we are on this earth, I want to give the rest of my life, and for the last 25 years, Cheryl and I have been doing this, to pour our lives into those who will take that ministry to another generation. And that's really what Southeast Church Extension is about. SCE is a member organization of IFCA International, as is, let's make sure we have this on, as is Piedmont International University. IFCA International, we're going to make it work. Can you all click this for me? We'll get there. All right, even if we don't. You work on the clicker, I'm going to keep on talking. All right. Southeast Church Extension is a member organization of IFCA International. Dr. Lofquist yesterday explained a little bit about that to you. IFCA International is a network, really, a fellowship of men and churches that rally around a common doctrinal belief. And so as we work to extending the IFCA's ministry in the Southeast, Southeast Church Extension is the venue in which we're going to do that. You may click again, or should I try it? Go ahead. These are the states in which Southeast Church Extension is working to extend the ministry of the IFCA. Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the 2 Carolinas, the eastern halves of Kentucky, Tennessee, and the mountain areas of Virginia. And there's not a lot of IFCA presence in these areas, but we're working on that, and we're seeing some great things happen. Next, Southeast Church Extension has a number of different ways in which we extend ministry. You know, there aren't that many words that start with SCE. And since I'm a preacher, I like to alliterate things, and so it was hard, but I did come up with scenario. Southeast Church Extension does these things. Next. We're all about new churches, extending ministry to the Southeast in helping church planting minded churches start new churches, and pastors who are interested in being involved in the birth of a baby church, which is an amazing thing to do. Church planting is an awesome thing because in a lot of ways you get to kind of pour your personality and your life in as a pastor or a pastor's family, a pastor's wife, into the lives of these new people. We come alongside existing churches to help them develop strategies for church planting. Several years ago, when I was pastoring in Indiana at Heritage Bible Church, we developed a strategy that we called the Judea Project, in which we looked at 3 different levels of supporting churches in a local, more of a localized regional area within a couple, 3 hours of Remington, where there would be a parent church, partner churches, and promise churches. And those words were adopted then by IFCA in what we call Vision America. Parent churches are hugely involved, partner churches are largely involved, and promise churches just promise to pray and to help with the new work. And so new churches are really an important thing to us. Next. Assistance. You can go one more. There you go. Assistance. We work to extend counsel and encouragement, to be a friend to pastors, to help churches grow and mature. Whatever we can do to come alongside a church and help them in the process of maturity, that's what we want to do. We have tools to do that. I'll talk with you in a few moments about the IFCA youth ministry, but that's a huge one to me. That's part of my passion, to extend ministry to churches that don't need it. A lot of little churches have small youth groups, 2, 3, maybe 5 teenagers. They think they can't do anything. But when they band together, they can do amazing things and teach these young people how to serve. I worked with a church a few weeks ago that have some adolescents and some college-age people, but not really a lot of teenagers. And they're kind of discouraged about that. And I said to them, go to those younger people, the adolescents, and help them. Help them learn about ministry. Use the college-age people to do that. Our church in Indiana had a fairly nice youth group for a baby church, and we had a game time. We had a children's ministry on Wednesday night where the boys and girls played games at the end. The teenagers had their youth meeting at the same time. And so the teenagers would end their youth meeting in time to go do the game time with the boys and girls. It was amazing. We had these teenage guys who were like monsters. They were 6'3", 6'4", weighed 250, 280 pounds, and they would go down and play the games with the 4-year-olds. It was awesome. So they would run around the circle, or they would do whatever they were doing, and these big guys whose feet were like boats, and the little ones were chasing them. And you ever seen like a hawk flying and the sparrows or the little birds kind of flying along and picking at them? That's the way the little ones do with the big teenagers. It's amazing. And so the boys and girls grew to love the teenagers, and the teenagers grew to love the boys and girls. And things like that, the IFCA can come alongside a church and train and help to do that. We also work to extend counsel to churches in an evaluation way. You can click the next one, I think. Actually, go back. Let me say a little more about this one. I'm trying to rush through because I want to get to the internship part very quickly. We call what we call reality check is a way to come alongside churches, healthy churches perhaps, and evaluate their ministry. Sometimes not so healthy churches, and evaluate their ministry and offer critical care and life support. That's what we call reality check. All right, let's go to the next one, internships. We want to be involved in the networking of young men and young women who are in the process of or at the end of their formal training to give them that hands-on kind of ministry experience that we all need. I was raised in a small Bible-believing church, and I really had an awesome privilege because I was around churches. Some people graduate from Bible college, they've never been around churches and church things. Les was telling me when he became a pastor of a church, he had never done a funeral. Is that correct? He never officiated over a memorial service. I did 7 funerals my first year of ministry. If you don't know how to do a funeral, if you don't know how to comfort a grieving family, what do you do? Who learns you? And so what we do with internships is field trips. I remember when I did my first field trip to a funeral home. I was actually a Bible college student at the time. And this was back in the 80s when AIDS was just becoming an issue. And there we were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we thought, what do we need to know about this? And they took our whole pastoral theology class to a funeral home, and the funeral director explained to us the what you do's and the what you don't do's kinds of things. And this AIDS thing was just becoming a real issue. And so he said, this is a concern to us, and here's some things that we want you to know. So I started doing that with interns. We would take them to funeral homes. We would take them to ordination councils. We would take them to a variety of places. I pastored a church in a small town in Indiana of 1,500 people. There was our church and a handful of other churches. None of them really were Bible-believing, Bible-teaching churches and denominational kinds of things. One of the churches was a Catholic church in town. They had a beautiful building built in 1899. They had restored it. It was amazing. It was just architecturally, it was just beautiful. So I'd made friends with the priest. I figured, I don't think this man's saved, and I'll never get to share the gospel with him if I don't become his friend. So I became his friend. And one day I said to him, hey, I've got some interns in town. They would love to see your building. Would you be willing to give us a tour? Yeah, he said. He's kind of an older, gruff man. Yeah, bring him over. And so we did. There was, a bunch of us, 3 interns. A couple of them were married, so their wives were with them, and my wife and me. And they gave us this, wonderful tour of this building and explained, the Stations of the Cross, which to a lot of Protestants is new news. They don't understand that. And explained all of that to them. And then we were standing kind of like in the middle of the building. And I said to him, I have a question for you. They're all there. We're all there. I said, I have a question for you. In your understanding, what does it take for a person to enter heaven? We'd like to hear what you believe about that. And he said, well, I know what the church says, but I'm going to tell you this. And he pointed his finger at me. He says, I'm going to tell you this. If you aren't a good person, you're not getting in. And my interns went, They never forgot. We called those internship lessons. They never forgot that. That they're in that little small town there were so many people who believed all they had to do was be a good person. And you know what? Small town, Midwest, small town, Southeast, it's all the same. They're filled with a lot of good people who think they're okay with God, and they need you. They need you to help them understand their sin and the need for salvation that we all have. So we do that, those kinds of things with internships. We would spend a lot of time around the kitchen table. Cheryl and I would regularly have usually single, but not always single. Sometimes they were married. They would live with us. We had a big, huge Victorian house with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and 2 living rooms. We could do that. And so I would say to interns, if you come do an internship at Heritage Bible Church, you can live with us. You can come for free. We'll feed you. You stay in a nice air-conditioned room, and at supper time you can watch Fox News with me, which is, it was our devotional time. Wanted them to understand how important it was to have a family relationship in ministry. Don't ever let someone tell you, you guys who are going to be pastors, don't ever let someone tell you that it's okay to lock yourself in your office and forget your family. It's not okay. And so we worked on the family part of internships a lot. Click again, if you would, please. I've put together a couple screens of some of the things that normally would be included. Now, depending on the individual situation and gifts and what's available, perhaps some of these might not always be able to focus on, but certainly this is our goal. For a young man who comes and does this is summer internship, 10 weeks. You would have opportunities for preaching. Typically, I would have a summer internship preach twice on Sunday morning, usually at the beginning of the internship and then at the end. And we would grade them, or I would grade them, just like if they were in a preaching class. It's an amazing thing. We prepared our church for years before we began bringing interns in. And we told them, now this is your opportunity to love on these guys and to minister to them. I wanted the church to understand that this is just not a guy coming to cut the grass. I'll tell you a grass cutting story in a moment, though. He's coming to learn, so love him. He's going to make some mistakes. Love him. And so I let him preach. I wanted them to do that. We would have summer interns teach. Typically, I would assign an intern the same passage to teach 4 times. You would teach it, I would assign the passage and I'd say, I want you to teach this to children's church, youth group meeting, adult Sunday school, and senior saints Bible study. I'm going to take the same passage of Scripture and teach it in all 4 venues. It's a great discipline to learn how to do that. We would have our interns attend our regular leadership meetings, whether they be elders or deacons or whatever. In a Southeast Church Extension internship, you'd be involved in that. The only time we would keep an intern away from something like that is if it was an embarrassing kind of discipline thing. But even then, we would fill you in as much as we could. I remember one time taking an intern to a board meeting that was a very difficult one at that place in our ministry. And he walked out of there like a scared deer. His eyes were like this big. And I said, I promised you I wouldn't hide anything from you. Yeah, okay. Because listen, if you can't handle my internship, you're never going to make it pastor in a church. That's what I tell people when I do premarital counseling. I'm going to be so hard on you. But if you can't handle my premarital counseling, you're never going to make it in marriage. I had 2 women call off weddings after we did the Bible study on the husband's role in the home because they said he'll never do that. And I said, praise the Lord, you finally saw it. One of them I wasn't going to marry anyway. She didn't know that, but interns would be involved in outreach, visiting new contacts, hospital visitation. I think that might be on the list later. I took one intern one time to a hospital visit. One of my neighbors just across the alley was very ill, and I wanted to go visit him. I'll tell you the end of the story before I tell you this part. The end of the story, I was able to lead him to a profession of faith in Christ. I prayed with him 45 minutes before he died. I took this intern into the hospital room, and I didn't know what was going to be happening. I knew he was very ill. We walked into the hospital room, family was all there, and we followed a doctor into the room. And so the doctor went in, and we were right there, and the doctor didn't even pause. He just went in, and he said, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but we're going to send your dad home so he can die with the family. And there I was with this intern, who also had the deer in the headlights look. You need to know those things, and so internships help you get that hands-on kind of experience. An intern would be involved in planning worship. I'm kind of I get laughed at because I like things even and planned and organized, and so I like to know boom, 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 what's going to be happening in our worship. What song is what? Who's praying next? All that. We never publicized that. We didn't put it in the bulletin because if we wanted to change it, we did, and we didn't want anybody to know that we were changing it. But we always had it planned. So I give interns a theme for the Sunday, and then they prepare an entire worship service around that. Doesn't make any difference if you're musical or not. If you're going to be pastoring a church, you need to be able to do that. We have an intern plan and lead a communion service. Next screen, please. Hospital visitation, I've talked about that, working with youth ministry. Sometimes churches will look at interns as, oh, this is a free youth pastor. I never looked at it that way. However, if you're going to go pastor a small church, you are also the youth pastor. And I love youth ministry. Junior high is my favorite group. I'd rather teach and preach to junior hires than anybody. Because you know what? You can tell junior hires what it is, and they hate you for like 30 seconds. And then you're their friend again. By the time they get into high school, they've learned to hold grudges. Plus, usually, I can play basketball with junior hires and at least hold my own if it's girls. Sometimes. That's getting harder and harder to do. Interns would attend IFCA meetings with the pastor wherever possible. Sunday platform duties, if you have any musical ability, you would be there on the platform doing that. And lots of discussions with either the host pastor or me or perhaps both about how to plan a funeral, what to do. I'm kind of template oriented, so I'll make templates and just check, a list oriented guy. And so I have on my computer just a list of questions that I ask. So when I go to someone's home who's lost a loved one and we're planning the funeral, I take my laptop right with me and my wife takes notes, and we just have all these questions. What's grandma's favorite song? What's grandma's favorite Bible verse? So it asks all the questions that you need to know. So we give all of that to the interns. Wedding planning, pre-marriage counseling, how to do a baptism, how not to do a baptism. That's important. I baptized a lady one time who was 84. Her son, she was so ill, she couldn't even come to church anymore. She was confined to a wheelchair. Her son came and said, my mom's never been baptized. We were talking about some churches, that didn't emphasize that, and my church had been one of them. And so this lady's 84 years old, never been baptized. And so I said, well, I'll go over and talk to her. So I went to her house. It's in October. This is Michigan. We could never do a baptism after Labor Day because it was always too cold. And so this is in October. And so I went, and her name was Isabel. And I said, Isabel, I'm so glad to hear this. And she gave me her testimony. And she said, I want to get baptized. And I said, all right, next spring, once the weather breaks, we'll do that. We've got an old wheelchair. We can wheel that right out in the lake, and we'll baptize you. And she said, I want to get baptized now. I don't care if you got to chip ice off the water. I want to get baptized now. Well, our church didn't have a baptistry in it, but there was another church a few miles away, and I was friends with the pastor, and he had a homemade baptistry. It was made out of plywood, and he'd fiberglassed over it, and it was on wheels, and they brought it to the front of the church, and there was these big, huge steps, and this lady probably weighed 200 pounds, and she would barely stand. And so it took 4 of us to get her, because you had to go up into the baptistry and then down. And so we got her up in there, and I baptized her. I said, Isabel, you got anything to say testimony-wise? And she said, yeah, don't wait till you're 84 to get baptized. and so I baptized her, and then she baptized all of us, getting her out of the baptistry. And I had a young pastoral trainee with me there. It was a great lesson for him. Church legal matters. We talked about some of those over breakfast this morning. They're hugely important to you. Church policies and financial procedures. Next screen, please. I have a couple pictures to show you. Hope you can see that. On one Sunday, some of our interns showed back up at church. And so this was a handful that we had. Our church of 60 people, we had 9 interns the last 5 years that we were there. The man on the far right is Chris Allen, who was a trainee with me for 5 years. He worked a full-time job and was doing kind of internship resident training with us for 5 years. And he's the guy that I talked with you about 2 days ago in chapel, who, when we believed God was moving us on to give direction to Southeast Church Extension, that then Chris Allen stayed on to be the pastor of the church. It was just a wonderful experience. Next picture, please. We called this the Wall of Fame. We had this in the back of the auditorium. In the middle, the picture in the middle there is our church charter. And when we organized the church, and Les, you were there, I think, 22 months after we had our first public worship service, we constituted our church and organized it and chartered it. And so all of our charter members signed this document. That's the original copy there. And it stated our purpose of training, one of our purposes as being training people for ministry. So we wanted to focus around that. So these were all interns that we have. One of those guys, and I won't tell you which one since I know this is being broadcast, but one of these men came to me. He was new. His parents were new to our church. He had never been there. And he came home for Christmas vacation, and he was a seminary student. He had gone to a Bible Institute, and from there he had gone on to a Bible college and got an undergrad degree. And from there he had gone right to seminary. He was in his late 20s. There was no one in his life. He was broke. He had spent the last, 8-9 years being trained for ministry, but had never had an internship opportunity or had never had a venue to give back. He had kept taking in, which is a great thing to do, but he was never using what he had learned. And we sat at a McDonald's, and he said to me, I am so miserable. He said, I've been to Bible Institute, I've been to Bible college, I'm halfway through seminary, there's no woman in my life, I'm broke, I don't think I can go back to seminary, I don't have any ministry at all, I don't know what to do. And you know what I told him? Why don't you stop, put your education on pause for a while, and come and do an internship with me? You need to know people. He didn't know anybody. So he did. The next summer, he did an internship with us. He actually didn't go back. He finished that semester, but he couldn't afford to go back to seminary again, so he moved back home. So by the time we got to February, he was back at church, so we'd plugged him into our youth ministry. Took him to a youth retreat in February, and guess what he met? A woman at the youth retreat. Godly gal from another IFCA church. And man, it was like Google eyes from the first moment. And they fell in love. By the end of the summer, he's talking to me about, I think I'm going to ask her to marry me. What do you think I should do? And I said, how old are you? Well, gave me his age. late 20s. How old is she? Same. Do you love her? Yeah. Oh, yeah. He goes, oh. I said, go ask her to marry you. And if you ask her to marry you, don't come back and tell me we're going to get married in 5 years. Get married. Man, he took my advice. They got married in January. In the process of that, because he was in our system, that wasn't Southeast Church Extension at that time, that was Midwest Church Extension, we were able to introduce him to other pastors and church planters. And by the end of the summer, because he was in our network, he was able to interview for an assistant pastor church in a suburb of Chicago and got that position and got married and was bearing fruitful ministry because he was in the network. Now, I'm not going to tell you if you come do an internship with us that we'll find you a wife. But I will tell you that one other of these interns there married Chris Allen's daughter. So we were like, we had a twofer that year, you know. I won't tell you that. In fact, Chris Allen had 2 other daughters who were very beautiful young ladies. And the next summer, after the one came and fell in love with the older daughter, the next summer I said to that intern, the Allen girls are off limits. Stay away from them. They did. Internships are great. They really are. So if you're interested in doing something this summer, we also have a strategy for longer term internships. Please come talk to me. Potentially even where we live in the mountains of East Tennessee, there's a river rafting company in our area that's owned by believers that have already told me that if I have interns or an intern this summer that they'd be willing to give them work. So we can do some things like that. I'm going to move very quickly. I've got 2 minutes and we'll get finished. Next screen, outreach. We extend the gospel to sinners by that way. This whole network of ministry and encouragement. Please go to the next screen. Go one more. There you go. Prayer requests. Please pray for interns this year. Please pray for our board of directors. They're listed there. Go to the next screen. Please pray that we might be able to offer ministry to 12 churches. I've already been probably close to that many already this year. So that's a huge thing. We do a church health conference called Building Blocks of Church Health. One of those Voice magazines back there has an overview of that that I authored. Please feel free to take that. We'd like to see in Southeast Church Affiliate Church in each of the 3 regionals. So that would be the Mississippi, Alabama area, the Georgia and 2 Carolinas area, and then the mountain areas in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. An affiliate church in each of those areas. Next screen, please. We were able to purchase a house a few months ago. We're 10 miles from the Smoky Mountains. From that deck, you can actually see the Smoky Mountain National Park. The bottom level of this will be our ministry center where interns will live. If we have a summer intern in 2015, he'll be helping build the ministry center in the basement of this building, and then we'll be able to host retreats and things like that. Southeast Church Extension. I'd love to talk with you. We'll be here for another day and a half or so, and we'd love to